Every morning starts the exact same way. A 10-year-old boy in heavily soiled, oversized clothes, sprinting down a dusty street in a desperate attempt to reach his classroom before the bell. He almost always fails. He arrives late and immediately faces the teacher's reprimand, standing quietly at the front of the room while she scolds him for his lack of punctuality. The isolation continues throughout the day. Because his clothes are unwashed and carry a heavy odor, his classmates physically recoil, leaving a ring of empty desks around him. At lunch, the divide is even clearer. While the other students eat together and share food, he sits alone under a tree. He brings no tiffin, so he spends the hour studying on an empty stomach. Through all of this, the boy never complains or retaliates. He absorbs the laughter and the disciplinary action in complete silence, keeping his focus entirely on his schoolwork. It is easy to mistake that kind of silence for apathy, but it usually signals a child carrying a burden so heavy that the educational system around him has failed to even recognize it exists. Eventually, the teacher decides to look beyond the classroom. Curious about his repeated tardiness and unkempt state, she waits for school to end and secretly follows him home. He doesn't head toward his own neighborhood. Instead, he bypasses the smaller houses and slips through the gates of a large, wealthy estate. He emerges hours later, his clothes inexplicably damp. Without pausing, he immediately breaks into a frantic sprint toward his home. Seeing the boy leaving a wealthy property with wet clothes, the teacher makes an immediate assumption. She concludes that the homeowner is illegally using the child for manual labor. Humans naturally fill in the blanks when they see a child in distress, but acting on a fraction of the story often points a well-intentioned desire for justice in the wrong direction. The next day, the teacher confronts the homeowner. While we don't see the initial conversation, the truth of the situation is enough to bring the teacher to tears. Those tears quickly turn into legal action. She contacts a journalist friend, and together they trigger child labor protocols, filing a formal police complaint against the estate owner. The response is swift. Officers arrive at the estate and place the homeowner under arrest. Days later, the case moves to a crowded courtroom. The atmosphere is tense. Child exploitation charges carry the weight of a prison sentence, and the homeowner faces the full force of the law. The judge looks at the defendant and demands a defense. He asks her to explain why she allowed a small child to perform the labor in her home. Laws are often blunt instruments, designed to protect the vulnerable. But when those rules are applied without nuance, they can inadvertently crush the very people they were written to save. Before the homeowner can answer, the boy stands up in the courtroom. He enters the witness box to defend the woman who has been accused of exploiting him. He explains his reality to the court. His father passed away years ago, and for the last 8 months, his mother has been too ill to work. Look at this scale. On one side, his mother's medicine and school fees. On the other, 0 income. Taking over chores added a small block of income to keep the family afloat. If the court removes that income, the entire family system crashes completely. He gives the judge a final grim choice. Jailing his employer will directly lead to his mother's death and the end of his future. In the absence of a social safety net, this specific arrangement was the only thing keeping the boy's family from total collapse. A heavy silence falls over the courtroom as the judge and the teacher process the boy's sacrifice. The judge acts immediately, exonerating the homeowner and clearing her of all charges. He publicly thanks her for her compassion toward the family. He then uses the case as a formal basis to recommend new government policies, arguing that no child should have to choose between their mother's life and their own education. The journalist's coverage spreads through newsrooms and digital feeds. As the story gains attention, private donors and regional NGOs begin coordinating to provide the family with long-term resources. This pressure eventually leads the government to establish a new protocol. Families in extreme financial distress can now access state-sponsored medical care and guaranteed school enrollment without cost. The change is visible in the classroom. The boy now arrives in clean clothes, on time, and carrying a tiffin his mother prepared. His classmates no longer pull away. They save him a seat. The teacher watches the shift and reminds her class that empathy requires looking past the outward signs of poverty, because the quietest people are often fighting the most heroic battles.